The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Chasing Purpose. I'm your host, Kathleen Connor. Before I get started, I hardly ever look at myself on the camera, but today I noticed a shine. We'll call it a sparkle. I don't know what it's from. It must be a lotion or something that I have on. So hopefully it's not distracting to you, and I will not look at myself because it's distracting to me. Anyway, we have some great topics. If you're here for the first time, I am so glad you found your way in, and I hope you stay a while. If you've been here before, well, welcome back. We have a lot to cover. So today's topic is an important one, and I think it's one that no one talks about enough. And I think it's something so critical to not only our lives, but our relationships. And it's called the pause. And what the pause is, there's a lot of situations where we pause. Like, for example, when we need to make a decision, we pause when we gather facts or before we make the decision. And that's not this pause. That pause is important, but this one is crucial and critical, in my opinion. And what it does is when the moment comes up, when there's something that someone says to you that catches you off guard, perhaps it comes across a little critical or a little judgy, and it just creates that trigger that you want to respond. That moment that everything in you, everything feels that it's coming, it's bubbling up, and you feel the trigger. You feel the old reaction coming to the surface. Everything in your body, your teeth clench, your shoulders tense up, and your chest tightens. And your voice gets sharp. You're ready to fight, and you're ready at least to defend your role and your stance. And the pause is what stops you from doing that. So before you snap, and we all have, and we all can, believe me, before we get defensive and before you're about to do something that you've always done, and when someone pushes you in that way, and that particular button that they know how to push and when to push it, there's that moment. It's maybe 1 second, maybe 2, maybe there's even a longer pause, but it's where you choose something different. It's that moment of the pause. And if you can learn it, if you can find it, everything within your relationships and within yourself changes. Because right now, you do not pause, you react. Something happens and you go into automatic. You say something you don't mean, or maybe you mean in the moment. You get angry about something that's not really what the moment was about, and maybe you shut down. Maybe you fight, you defend, you attack. You do what you've always done. And then you spend the rest of the day maybe regretting it, maybe regretting the anger, the position that you took, or that you hurt somebody. And you're wondering why you didn't handle things differently. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can. And how you do that is with the pause. Let me tell you what happens when you don't pause. Someone says something, a partner, a boss, a friend, someone in the hallway, who knows? It sounds critical. Maybe it's about something you did. Maybe it's about how you look. Maybe it's about how you handled a situation in a specific moment. And before you've even had time to process what the words meant, you're already defending yourself. You're already explaining why the other person is wrong and why your stance or your situation and perception of it is right. That's the difference, right and wrong. You've already you're already on the attack, and you attack back, and you've already gone. There's no coming back from that stance. But by the time you realize it and what you've done, you've already started the next conversation, which is usually a fight. And it didn't really need to happen. You've escalated something that could have been a conversation later on, or not at all. You've proven to them, and you rung a bell. Use that as a metaphor. Think about that. Once you ring a bell by something you say, by words having meaning, you can't unring it. You can't take it back. The bell is rung. Even if you say you're sorry, even if it came out of anger or out of emotion, that lands. The bell, the sound, it can never be taken back. So you say something that you regret, and that starts something all over again. And maybe what you need to realize is what the person did, what their words did, what they made you feel was a trigger. And it was something in you that triggered a reaction. It was something maybe from your past, maybe from your childhood, maybe from past relationships. Maybe it's a feeling you have of yourself that just bubbled to the surface so quick you couldn't stop it. Well, now you can. You feel an old wound and it gets activated. You feel the anger rise above everything else. And before you know it, it comes out of your mouth. And you get to react in an unhealthy manner, in an unhealthy way. And you snap back, you defend, you justify, and maybe even get mean. And it certainly isn't productive or healthy. You just want to reinforce who you are instead of the person that they thought you were, right? You want to defend your position, your stance, your words, your choices in that matter. And you have to realize that you're defending yourself doesn't come from your words, it comes from your actions. It comes from your belief in your worth. It doesn't come from your triggers. I often find people when they get triggered in a situation, they tend to fire back at someone. They tend to turn the tables, as we've talked about before. When someone says something like, you did this, well, suddenly you say, well, you did this, and you try to deflect the situation back onto them. And it goes round and round and round until it's exhaustive. And until you both are exhausted or everyone's exhausted, depends on how many people are involved. And when someone contradicts you in a meeting or in a work environment or in a situation, they just say something that's just out of sorts. Well, the best thing to do is exactly what we're talking about today, is to pause. It can happen in any situation, in any and every situation. You could be at the restaurant, you could be at the grocery store, you could be getting gas, you could be doing anything, and someone makes a comment to you, not knowing that they're going to trigger you, but you can feel it bubbling up inside of you and you just want to react. And now I grew up in New England and I have no qualms about that. I loved that area. I loved the people and all that. But as you know, if you spent time there, we're pretty rushed people, and we could be pretty quick with our horns and our cars and maybe our middle fingers at times. So when that happens, those are just triggers. And when someone tells us off or someone flips us off or honks their horn at us, you have to realize that that's more about them than it is about you. Sure, you might have made a mistake, pulled in front of them too quickly, and they had to react. That's what it was a reaction, was a trigger. So in those situations, you want to speak up. You want to set things straight. You want to make sure that everyone knows, that person especially, that they're the one who's wrong and not you. So again, it's in the pause. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It doesn't. You just pause. You pause and let the conversation take a breath. And when it takes a breath, and when you feel that breath and that pause, it doesn't have to be very long. it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation and of the relationship because it's not really worth it. It's not worth the win. It's not worth the fight. It's not worth the argument. And quite frankly, it's not worth your energy. Certainly not worth the energy of prolonging something that felt unhealthy. Why would you want to continue it, right? So you have to pause. And that's one of the most important things. And it's one of the most important things I feel that we could help each other with. And we could certainly teach our children this as well. We could teach our children to pause, that it's not important to have the last word in any conversation. It is hard to do. I grew up in a family of 7, and we didn't argue at all. It seemed like my parents, I never saw them argue. I never even saw my father's temper or voice raise at all. When he wanted us to stop doing something, he said it with a firm tone, not high volume. And usually it was, Kathleen, that's enough. And it was enough. You never heard him or his posture in an angry manner. And he was never someone that needed or wanted the last word. It wasn't important to him. Now, he was competitive, and we all were raised competitively, but we didn't fight to the death to win anything. We always respected each other and the other person. And it was, as I was growing up, it was harder to do, especially through my teenage years, to not take a argumentative stance to something. And I often did. But I tried to do it with respect and with curiosity. So you have to be careful when you get triggered in a conversation or when someone says something critical, or with judgment. Those are the two words that I find when people say something to me, I have to think that that's critical or that's judgy. And I have to think, where is this coming from? And if I pause long enough to understand and just think about things, and I say, that didn't come from something I did. It's coming from something that they are feeling, that they're feeling maybe afraid. They're feeling maybe that they're not being heard. And so you listen and we validate and we go through life in a posture that things aren't important to drag through the mud, right? It's not important to punish someone. I often talk about that as well. It's not important to take somebody and to just beat a topic into the ground ad nauseum. I think it's exhaustive and it doesn't do anybody any good, and certainly not the relationship at all. So you don't need to put them in their place at all. If you feel you need to come back to the conversation. So this happened to me just this week. I had a conversation with someone that I could have been triggered. I caught myself not being triggered. And I can tell you that feeling was liberating. That feeling was joy. Inside of me, I had that little shoulder shake, that little proud moment of joy, of you got this. And maybe I was smirking on the inside, and maybe one snuck out too, because I just thought, don't let them do that. Don't let them trigger you. Don't let them take your mood and change it. Don't let them turn this into an argument, because maybe it's their fear. Maybe it's their conviction that's important for them to deliver. And it's can be delivered without me being triggered, right? I don't have to say anything. I can just say, okay, thanks for sharing, in a nice, respectful, and kind manner. I don't have to brush it off in disrespect. But when I used to, and I still can, snap at people or snap at someone, it doesn't come from a place of love or a place of understanding or respect. It probably just comes from a reaction from the trigger, as I said. So I often see people in cars, especially if you start becoming aware of when you're at a red light and you look around and you see other people in cars, especially couples or mothers and sons or mothers and children or fathers and children, you can just feel their energy, their essence, as we're trying to call it now, as to what they're doing in the car. And you can just see if the situation is heated or they're in an argument. You can just feel it. You can see the tension in the body language. You can see it in their expression and all of that stuff. So pay attention. Pay attention to your body language, to others around you, to someone who's coming at you and triggering you. And I've caught myself in situations, both professionally and personally, where someone has said something to me that has caught me off guard. And in the past, it would have triggered me to go right after them, just say something where I would defend my position or my authority in a situation or my role and try to control the outcome. And instead, I've turned it and said, "Are you okay? How can I help you?" And man, does that person just get in check. And you're not doing it in a snotty way, you're doing it in a caring and compassionate way because you do care about someone. Maybe not a stranger on the street as much as someone that you live with or see every single day or work with every single day. But as humans, we care for people. It's our right, it's our human nature. It's decent, right, to do that. So we have to watch so that the moments don't get escalated. And when they get escalated, let's just talk about what happens when we don't pause. Sometimes we can use language, finger pointing, maybe even volume. I think it's, I don't want to say funny because I don't mean it that way. I think it's ironic. Maybe that's a better word. When people are in discussions, and even I, when I was in a discussion, and I try to get my point across even stronger, and instead of changing my words, I change the volume. And I just realize it's such a powerful thing to pause and to realize that talking louder really doesn't make it stronger. It makes it weaker. It makes you weaker. There's nothing and no one that wants to listen to someone at a higher volume. Absolutely not. When I have a discussion or a conversation with my son and I can get triggered and he can get triggered from me and we could raise our volume, I just think, oh, what a shame. That's exhausting because he doesn't want to listen to me louder. He doesn't want to listen to me at all when I'm trying to be parenting in control. That's not working for him. And it certainly doesn't work for me either. And all it does is exhaust us, both he and I. It becomes exhausting. And we've talked about before, and I've talked about in other episodes, and I hope that you can remember this, and I will bring it up again, that we have a code word, he and I, and it's purple. You're welcome to use it and to share it. And the word purple means that we pause. We create the pause when things are so heated and it's a tit for tat and we have to go back and forth. And suddenly it just gets, it's not about the thing that he wanted in that second or the thing that I wanted in that second. It becomes something about something that's been going on for a while, some issue that maybe we haven't addressed or we haven't addressed correctly, and it bubbles back up to the surface. It triggers something longer or from something deeper. And we both have used it and said purple. I've texted it to him when we get little arguments, maybe in a text kind of stuff like purple. I'm exhausted. I don't want to talk about this right now. And we respect the word enough and the pause enough to stop. And so that's it. The purple just creates the pause when things get too heated and we tend to just go back and forth without even thinking or breathing. And so the purple is just that word that either one of us can throw out. And it means that we just stop. We just pause. We don't go on anymore. We just respect the word and the request to stop, to breathe, to take a minute or a day or two or 20 minutes just to regroup. So this week happened that I was in a conversation and someone said something to me that I didn't agree with. I didn't appreciate. I didn't respect, and I didn't understand. And it was one of those things, it was about my parenting. It was one of those things that I could have and have in the past really dug my heels into it. That, parenting with someone who you have different views about parenting or generational differences or cultural differences or where you were raised differently as opposed to them, it can bring in a lot of things. It doesn't mean that his parents were right how they parented and my parents were wrong or vice versa. It's just different. I parent differently than he does. And so sometimes it bubbles up that he doesn't understand how I parent or want to understand. So there was a quick comment about my parenting, and In the past, I would have jumped on it. Believe me, I would have held on strong to my conviction and my role as a parent because I take it seriously, and I try really hard to grow within it and to do everything that I can to be the best parent. And I know we all do, but we're not perfect. And instead of doing anything about his comment, instead of defending it, instead of making a comment back to him as I would have done in past, and I would have probably drawn the thing out for 20 minutes or so and turned it into something totally different in another part of the relationship, it ended up that I just became silent. And again, in a respectful manner. I didn't pout, I didn't walk away. I just was, I don't see things the same way. I don't have the same perspective on the situation as you did, as he did. And I told him that I just think it's just something we came at differently. And that often can turn into a male female thing from maybe one side. I don't think it's that. And again, I don't get triggered that way. I could have in the past, and certainly did. But I just pulled away and was like, I didn't see things that way. I don't necessarily see things the way that you do. I try not to say I don't agree with you because that can start a fight. I try not to say, I just try to validate in a different way. And then a couple days later, I approached him and said, hey, the other night when we were talking and you made this comment, I found it to be disrespectful. I found it to be hurtful. I didn't like it. And I don't want you to say it again. And I certainly don't want you to say it again in front of our son. That didn't feel good. And it tried to bubble up again into a conversation that was going to be unhealthy and unproductive. And again, I had to pause again. Pausing isn't just one pause in the conversation is finished. Pausing is pausing a lot throughout your day. You learn patience. You learn to breathe. You learn to center yourself with a pause. You learn to not care about winning, not care about having someone really understand who you are if they don't care to. That sounds horrible, but sometimes they are more concerned about you understanding who they are as opposed to them understanding who you are. And you just have to let it go. It's just not important. It just can't be about to the end. What hill are you going to die on, right? And all of that. It's just not worth it. So it may take a lot. It does take a lot. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of pauses to feel that when you get it right, and when you do it on a repetitive manner, and that becomes now maybe a habit and then a pattern and maybe hopefully a lifestyle, that these pauses are integrated throughout your day, that it feels good. The pauses feel liberating. They feel like it's part of a healthier and more productive you. And it feels like growth, and it feels great. And like I said, I caught myself the other day when I didn't get triggered by somebody, that I felt a little smirk come across in my body, maybe not outwardly, but I felt like, that's the right thing to do, the right thing for me, the right thing for the situation, the right thing for the relationship as a whole. It's okay to pause and not continue. And if it's important, you can continue it in 20 minutes or 2 hours or 20 days or not at all. It's okay to not continually go on and on. The differences between my parenting and someone else's parenting is always going to be there. We're different people and we were raised by different parents. So that conversation can go on forever and ever and ever and ever about all kinds of things that we did in all kinds of phases of our lives in our parenting. It's not worth it. It's not going to do our relationship, any relationship in that nucleus, any good to continue to point out to someone else their limitations. I just had this conversation. Someone just called me, someone I love deeply, was having some troubles with a relationship and seeking advice from me. And I listened intently, and I care about them immensely as a couple, and immensely as individuals as well. And it was so important for this one person to have the other one acknowledge their limitations and to maybe apologize for something, and that they needed to see, and I actually took a different stance and said, for what reason and for whom? Who do they need to apologize for? And I learned that in a parenting class. We've talked in the past about love and logic that I've taken. I've taken it twice, and it was a powerful class here. And the teacher, of course, I knew and loved. So if you have an opportunity and you're having struggles with parenting, highly recommend Love and Logic. They're here in Colorado, but you can find them anywhere. Anyway, but there was one thing in there that I found was when parents seek an apology from a child, or from whether it's back to them or to someone else. Johnny, say you're sorry. Or Johnny, you did something bad, say you're sorry. Yes, it's important to teach our children to be, apologetic and understanding in their errors and their mistakes, and to take accountability for them. But when we need to have them say the words, how the class, or how this one instructor said, that it was more for our ego, our role as parents, than it was actually for the good of the child. And I thought that's important. And not only is it important in the relationship with the child, but I think it's important in any relationship. So in the relationship where someone just came to me and was talking about struggles, he was so adamant about, well, I need to hear an apology. I need to hear an apology. And I thought, well, for what purpose? What would the apology mean and make you feel? And it was like he just needed to hear it over control or over something else. And we moved away from it. And part of the reason why I think we moved away was I said to him, which I will say to you too, and I think it's very powerful, and I learned it the hard way, but that when we try to shine a light on someone else's limitations, so someone else's limitations, they're doing something we don't agree with, they're behaving in a manner that we don't want, we're frustrated because they're not behaving like we want them to, and more like we would. That's what frustrations come from in relationships, is we want the person to perform like us. That isn't always going to happen, and more times out of not, it doesn't. But what I said to him is, if you keep shining a light on this person's limitations, they only get brighter. It's exhausting every day to analyze a relationship and analyze someone's faults and analyze something that has happened ad nauseum. And it doesn't do any good. Every time someone does something, you bring something up that's happened 30 years ago, 30 days ago, 3 years ago, or whatever the situation is. It's just punishment. And I don't understand how healthy and how productive it can be to bring up past things, right? We are who we are, and we're constantly changing, and that's what we should do, and encourage others to do that too. So calm conversations destroy any angst that can continue. They can bring, the pause can bring just a calmness, a steadiness, a centering, as I've talked about before, and how we react to someone. And we can take it and look at it, and just that 1 second, 2 second, couple seconds, what it sounds like it's a lifetime. It's not. But you can change the dynamic of a conversation, and more importantly, of a relationship, when you pause, because you're changing the conversation and the relationship when you react, right? Certainly bringing negativity and angst and anger and resentment into the relationship when you react to something and it goes back and forth forever. Even if it goes back and forth for a second, it's not healthy and productive. So your reaction, instead of it being automatic and a past pattern and an old way that you performed for years, and it might have worked for you, that loudness, those temper tantrums, all of those things might have worked for you in a situation. Maybe it did when you were 2, maybe it did when you were 5, maybe it did when you were 15, right? Maybe it did when you were 25, 35. I hope not. Maybe those temper tantrums, I hope we learn that that behavior shouldn't be rewarded by getting what we want. That behavior should be turned into something healthy. I often viewed a relationship of friends of mine who were a couple, and he was a great guy and she was a very great lady as well, and they had a great relationship when it was healthy. But when it wasn't healthy, it could feel volatile, it could feel like a bubbling of rage. And he would be an avoid. He was an avoidant, I should say. He was avoidant, and he would just shut down in a peaceful manner, or maybe leave the room, or try to change the subject, or make a joke and all that. And she wasn't. She could throw stuff. She could throw a pillow across the room, and and maybe not trying to harm him. She could throw a remote across the room, and maybe again not to harm him, but to try to get his attention in the manner that she thought worked, because it worked when she was a child or toddler or 15-year-old. Temper tantrums worked, right? My son has played on baseball and other teams, and you can see how kids react to situations. And there was once a kid a long, long time ago that reacted in a situation where they pouted and they jumped and had this little temper tantrum on the sideline of a sporting event. And my son, again, I work a lot with him and I talk a tremendous amount with him, said a couple days later, which parent do I think that he learned that from? And I thought, what an interesting thing to say for my son. And again, he was probably 11 at the time. He said it to me, Mom, I just want you to know, when you saw blah, 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 have that temper tantrum over on the sideline, do you think he learned it from the mother or the father? And now I know both families. I've known them for years. My son has been in school with the son for since kindergarten. He just graduated 8th grade. So for a long, long time, 9 years. And I thought it was interesting. I didn't answer who I thought it was. I didn't want to get into that conversation, but I was pleased that my son knew that our behavioral patterns are learned, and they're often modeled by the people and the parents and the siblings and the grandparents that we're around, the people that we spend the most time with. So that's important, I think, again, to learn the pause. The pause is not a big thing. It is huge once you learn it and once you perfect it. Again, it's not about perfection. It's just about the pause. It's not a long process. It's just a moment. It's a breath. It's a space. It's a change in body language. It's a change in positioning in the room. If you feel as though you're not standing in a way that's comfortable for you, or there's not enough space or too much space between you and the person you're having the discussion with, that those things can all just be changed with a pause, with just an instant breath and a release of wanting and knowing that you could and have been triggered in your response prior. And so we can choose things and something different. And the pause feels like when someone says something to you that would normally trigger, and you feel it deep down, you feel it bubbling up, you feel a reaction start to activate in your body, your mind and your mouth, more importantly, want to get going, and something wants to come out and wants to come out sharply with conviction. That's when you pause. You take a breath. Sometimes I just put my hand on my chest, just close to my heart, so that I know that it's okay, that I'm safe. Not that I'm ever not safe, but in that situation, I don't say anything. I just pause. And I feel just myself centering in myself. My body may relax a little bit. My breathing may change. My breath may change. And inside of me, I just notice that I'm releasing that trigger, that urge to be angry, that urge to be noticed, to be defensive, to react. And it's so powerful. And once you notice it, and once you don't act on it, you feel powerful. You feel liberated. As I said, it's like this little bit of freedom that you have, that you didn't get pulled into something, that you feel like just I got you. You got yourself, and you don't have to perform. You don't have to participate in something that used to participate in that didn't always end up healthy. So you just let the control go. You just let it, someone else take it. And if they want control over whatever feeling or conversation or anger that they have within a situation or a topic, let them control it. It'll die. Fires die pretty quickly without oxygen, without fuel. So the same thing with conversations and the same thing with negative things. Don't give it energy. Don't give it fuel, your energy, and don't give it oxygen, your breath, your words. Don't feed it. Don't feed something that isn't worth feeding, right? That isn't going to serve you. And that's what you notice. You notice something that shifts. You notice the change in the situation. And that person may stop and pause as well. They may give you this look like, what happened? Why isn't she being triggered? Why aren't they being triggered? Why isn't he being triggered? Why is the conversation just dying? And they may not be comfortable with it. And that's okay too. You're not in charge of their comfort. It's okay to just let the pause be the pause. And you don't have to explain it. I mean, sometimes I say, I just don't feel like talking about this anymore. I'm exhausted. Can we just sidebar this for a little bit? Can we just release the conversation and come back to it when we're both feeling like we can focus on it in a more healthy manner? That's okay too. You can acknowledge and say that you need a pause, but those are usually in bigger situations. Those are usually in more heated discussions. But if you pause, the urgency of the reaction lessens. It becomes non-existent. The reaction and the urgency to fill the space isn't there anymore. You give the space back to you. You give the breath, your energy, the fuel back to you. And you choose yourself and how you want to participate and how you want to contribute. There's my line again. We're contributing members of any relationship and anything we do throughout a day. So you respond differently. Maybe you don't say anything. Maybe you just need a moment and you tell them that. And I think when you need moments, I think it's important to always never walk away. My opinion, I've seen it happen, walk away in a huff from a conversation and slam a door or leave mad and emphatic and maybe with a temper without coming back around and circling back around, because that becomes toxic too. That becomes kind of like a whiplash. That becomes like a, what the heck just happened? What was that all about? And that wasn't the reaction that you wanted either, right? So you say, I'm going to leave this conversation. I'm going to leave this topic, but I'm going to talk about it when I'm ready. Maybe I'll come back to you in a couple minutes or a couple of days, but I'll circle back around with you when I have my thoughts together and, more importantly, my emotions together, because I think that that's important too. But I often just take the pause as it is. I just stop and pause, put my hand on my heart, steady myself, change my body position, change my eye contact, just change my breath. That's the pause. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but it can be dynamic. And what happens? Really, I just love it. I love the pause. I don't look for situations that are unhealthy just so I can constantly pause. But when you do them and when they diffuse a situation, a topic, a conversation, you're going to feel the power that pause broke, that pause brought. You're going to feel the power that it brought to you by choosing a different pattern, a different habit, a different way to look at things. So it's a conscious decision. I will tell you that. I'm going to tell you, it is hard. It is hard to pause when you first start, because you're going to want to just rip someone's head off or strangle them. You are. I'm just saying that as a metaphor. I'm not encouraging it, but you are. We all do. But as you pause, and the more you learn to pause, the more you want to pause, the more you enjoy what the pause brings to you and to the relationship. And can happen in any way. It can happen. It's early in the morning here or early late in the morning, early afternoon here, and I have probably paused 20 times already in conversations or in situations. Now, granted, I start my day early and I have lots of conversations and interactions with people throughout my mornings. So maybe I'm an anomaly how many times I've paused already today. And I'm not doing it in a rude kind of way, but I went to the gym and I paused there because I just could have gotten into a conversation about something that would have pulled me into a thought that wasn't positive. And I paused about it. I paused and said, "Meh, I'm gonna have a great workout. So I'm gonna work hard on myself today and I'm gonna do the best I can." And that was the pause. And once you start getting it, and start understanding what it does for you and for others within your relationships and within your days and interactions, you're gonna love it. You don't have to defend yourself anymore. You don't have to explain why you did anything. You're gonna understand that words have meaning, and not all words need to be brought into every conversation. And you don't need to ring the bell. You don't need to perform and be winning at anything. You can just win at yourself, at your own worth, at adding your own value by staying strong in your own convictions to pause. And so you take a breath. You don't get defensive. You might have to bite your tongue or the inside of your cheek for a couple times in order for you to really feel the impact in how you do it. When I first started, I used to dig my fingernails into my palms. I used to hold a fist so close because I wanted to pause. I didn't want to pause, and I wanted the pause to be impactful for me, that I knew that I was doing it. So I did that as well. So I paused. And you'll find maybe you start with those types of things, a physical thing where I've heard people put their fingers around a wrist and they squeeze it. They squeeze the thumb and the middle finger to cause a pressure point when they need to pause. I've heard that tactic as well. So anything, it can be anything. You can pinch something. If you need a physical reaction so that you don't react verbally. I'm not suggesting self-harm or harming anybody by all means, that's for sure. But maybe you just need to know that you're physically present with yourself so you don't need to jump into a conversation to be physically present within that negative situation. So look for things. I've heard those things. I've heard people, I heard a lot of, not a lot, a few times I've heard people put their thumb around their wrist and middle finger and kind of hold it and squeeze it there so that they know they're present with themselves. And it just causes a feeling of, it's not a feeling or something we do that feels very comfortable unless we do it very often. So it kind of brings your conscious awareness to that part of the body instead of outward to the person or to the conversation. So I remember doing it. I don't have fingernails, I never really have, but I remember doing it to the point where you just have to kind of feel your fingernails in the palm. I had to, so that I knew that I wouldn't jump into that conversation and continue the negativity, or at least jump on the person and want to strangle them. So it was important for me to do that, to find that trigger point. And sometimes I have to go back to it, but often I have to put my hand on my heart, or often I just don't do anything. I try not to roll my eyes. I try not to show any type of like, this is ridiculous, or you're ridiculous. I try not to do any of those things that I may be feeling inside. I try to keep my composure, my facial expressions, and those types of things when I do pause. Again, it's just for a second. It's just for a couple seconds. It sounds like a long time, but it really is just as a pause. So I want you to know that you can change any conversation, and more importantly, you can change any contribution in any way you contribute to any conversation in any relationship with that one thing. And it is so important. So please try it. I think, and I know it is going to serve you. I know the pause has been something that I wish I had learned 20 years ago, or 30 years ago when I was dealing with my mother as a teenager, or however, when things were tough. I wish I would have known it in certain professional situations sooner than I have now. But when we understand it and we practice it, it's fun. It's enlightening and it's powerful, and it changes everything. So try it when you get home. Don't pick a fight so that you can do it. Certainly not. Don't pick a fight. Don't pick conversations that become that are going to be topics that are going to happen in a negative manner or in a way that can turn unhealthy very quickly so that you can practice. Don't do that. You'll have time and chances to practice throughout your day at coffee shops, in the hallway, at work, in your home life, with your children, with your spouses. Believe me, people want to, and you shouldn't want to be with conviction and try to control anybody else because of your fears and your negative emotions or participation in a situation. So do the best you can to do the boss, and you are going to love it. It breaks a pattern, it breaks a habit. And it just really, feel like I have the smirk on me when I talk to you. It really feels good. It shows that you're present within yourself and that you're not willing to deal with the criticism or the judgment. And you're willing to listen to them, but not to react to them, certainly not fall apart by them. And that you have to realize that when someone does those types of things, it's probably more times than not a reflection on their feelings, their fears, and their limitations than yours. So the words may come out and be directed at you, but I'm pretty sure that it started somewhere inside of them, that something in some way was triggered inside of them, and they just feel the need to control the situation that you're involved in a negative way and see if they can impact you and have you feel something that's negative so that they're not alone in their misery. We've talked about that before, that misery loves company. So do listen for situations and opportunities to pause. You'll love it. I swear it's going to be one of the best things that you will teach, learn, show, model to your children and people around you, and people will react differently. You'll see their behavior around you become different. It'll take some time. You'll have to learn it. I've been doing it for several years. It feels like not long enough, and I still have to catch myself and say, don't do it, Kath. Don't get triggered by that. Don't comment. Breathe. Take a pause. That's what's important, because sometimes conversation and unfortunately sometimes people just aren't worth it, and it's not worth your time and energy to give something negative and increase the negativity. So I hope you found this to be helpful. I hope that if you have, you listen to it again. I hope that you give a review and subscribe anywhere you're listening. I hope that you can send it and share it with somebody who may need to know how to pause, and we all do. So hopefully you all share it. And I just want you to know that how much I appreciate you, and I want you to thank you for showing up today, not only for yourself, but for me. We have a lot of work to do, and I'll be here every week, and I hope that you join me. So until next time, keep chasing purpose.